Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm going to be talking about Pluto's re-entry into Aquarius. It first entered back in March 2023, and now after spending quite a lot of time in the sign of Capricorn, retrograding and turning direct, it is re-entering Aquarius. It's only going to stay in Aquarius until September, and it'll take a brief backwards trip through Capricorn again until November, so that from that point on, we are fully into Pluto in Aquarius. It won't ever come back to Capricorn, well, at least not for another 240 odd years. So it's going to be long after all our particular lifetimes. Well, since this is the first video of 2024, I want to welcome you back and to say we are going on quite a journey in 2024. It is a huge year. It's one of the biggest years I've looked at alignment-wise for a long time. And really since 2020 and the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, we've had a lot of stuff going on, which I've taken you through. And 2025 too is going to be another massive year. So that means it's a big year for the whole of the world in terms of global developments, mankind, and of course it is for all of us individually. Now, although I've taken as my centerpiece this idea of Pluto returning to Aquarius on the 20th, 21st of January, depends where you are in the world, there are also a lot of things happening at this particular time. Uranus is stationary, poised to turn direct. There's a full moon approaching, which is going to bring out the whole of this Sun-Pluto experience. The Sun is conjoined to Pluto the day hours before it fully enters Aquarius. And, you know, just so many things collecting around this point in January, which is why I've referred to it as one of the power points of the year. And indeed, there are going to be several others, which I will take you through as we go through 2024. So let me start really by looking at Pluto and Aquarius. Obviously, there's a big video that I did on this whole scene just a little under a year ago, so it's always worth going back there and getting all of that under your belt as well. But you know something, we've had a taste of Pluto in Aquarius already. I mean, I called it an appetizer last year. And now, as I'm speaking to you, I think we can fully feel the effects of this mighty change of sign from Capricorn to Aquarius. I've referred to this as a kind of parallel or a kind of image we might want to put in our minds. So the idea of two great oceans meeting, you can imagine the force at which they meet, and that passage, trying to go through that, is very stormy indeed, very unsettling, great period of upheaval. And I think these latter degrees of Capricorn, and I would say really from the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the January of 2020, right through to where we are now, January 2024, we've been going through this dark sea crossing, this incredibly stormy period. But of course, once we're through it, we're through the other side of it, it will be not quite so intense as it is now, both in terms of what's going on in the world when we think of all the huge conflicts, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Israel, Gaza, the Yemen. I mean, it's everywhere. There is colossal upheaval and conflict. And almost all of us, I can't think of an exception in terms of my clients or my friends and family who aren't going through an incredible amount of personal stuff too at this particular time. So we're all part of that journey individually, battling our demons, so to speak, and we do that on behalf of the collective as well. And we experience this collective passage because it's as though all the experiences, the soaking up of that experience goes into the collective psyche, of which we're all part of, and so it does filter through to us at some level. We feel it, even if we don't think about it every moment of the day. So, as I often say, we make our small journeys in our own life, but we do that in the sense of helping mankind through the same kind of journey. So where do I want to really begin, as opposed to sort of talking about, Pluto generally in Aquarius? I know that there are a lot of people who talk about Pluto in Aquarius in very glowing terms, because Aquarius is considered to be this humanitarian sign, this a kind of higher consciousness sign, really. And so there are great high hopes that Pluto, is the great transformer of the planets, will coincide with great kind of growth in consciousness and big developmental changes for mankind in the most positive sense. And there's also a feeling, because Aquarius is about the people in a way, that this is giving power to the people. That certainly when we thought about Pluto in Capricorn and the idea that this was all about government, it was all about fixed orders and, the people, the government being the power and the people not in power. By the time it moves to Aquarius, we've got the reverse going on. And so you've got a lot of kind of changes in that direction. Well, be that as it may, over the course of the 20 years that it's going to take Pluto to move through Aquarius, maybe indeed we will see the people rising up against its governments, wherever they may be, and a kind of new era of humanity coming into being. We can always look at it like that and hope for it like that. But in a way, we've got to look at the reality, and we've got to look at what's going on right now. As Pluto moves into Aquarius, we actually have the reverse going on. We have far-right governments really on the increase. We've got far-right thought being almost the predominant thought, and democracies somehow floundering with themselves. And democracies, of course, were created for the voice of the people to be heard. By when we go to the polls, we vote who we want to lead us. But all of that all over the world is in a sea change, just like those two oceans meeting at that point in time. And so right now, we're going through the thick of it. And I think for the time being, maybe at the end of it all, we will have become more elevated. I don't know, but certainly right now, I don't think that's really quite the case. I think we're struggling against forces that we don't understand, and we really seem to, or appear to have, absolutely no power over. If we go back to the previous Pluto in Aquarius cycle, that was 1777 to 1798, it was an era of revolution. The American Revolution, the French Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution in many ways was also developing at this time. And so we have some idea that a lot of orders are being changed. And when you think about the American Revolution, when you think about the French Revolution, these were all about monarchies, or rather the end of the monarchy, and republics coming into being, certainly in America. And if you're interested in history, and I'm pretty interested in history, we had George III on the throne with Queen Charlotte. And you may remember who he was if you ever saw the film The Madness of King George. Well, that was the George who was on the throne during that 1777 and onward period. And of course, that was the time that America gained its independence. Of course, the Charter of Independence, 1776. French Revolution, Marie Antoinette, right, and Louis, of course, they were dispatched. The monarchy ended and the great French Republic came into being, Napoleon Bonaparte following shortly thereafter. So that's a really big theme with Pluto and Aquarius. And I've already mentioned the Industrial Revolution, which was huge because it took life as it once was into a whole different era. A new merchant class really arose, a new industrial class arose, and things moved from arable and the countryside, and the way life was at that time was a huge revolution. So we know that we're going to get that kind of revolution in our next Pluto cycle, as we're living through now. And we will see governments falling and perhaps new kind of structures coming into place. We may even see our monarchies changing. And in fact, as I'm speaking to you, only a couple of days ago, Queen Margaret of Denmark abdicated in favor of her son, Frederick. So we've got a new King Frederick coming into Denmark. And as you know, last year, Queen Elizabeth II died, and King Charles was crowned. Well, actually, she died in 2022, but Charles was crowned in 2023. So we already have some big changes in the monarchy. And I do really think that there's going to be more, because Queen Margaret, who I don't know, and I know not a lot about the Danish monarchy, except that she was a great friend of Queen Elizabeth II, and also believed that the throne was for life, that it was a life's job. And so for her to have abdicated in favor of her son is a big sea change. And of course, now we have King Charles III on the throne. I can see a very similar thing coming along, maybe not this year, but in the not too distant future, where he gives way, yields the throne to William. And we may get a little bit more of a feeling of that as we go through 2024. Certainly, when I think about Charles's chart, his moon is 0 degrees of Taurus, and where is Pluto? At 0 degrees of Aquarius. So Pluto is really challenging that moon of Charles. And so this is not a comfortable transition for him from Prince Charles to King Charles. I suspect he struggles, even though he's eminently suited for the job and has been in training for all his life. I think the time he has come to the throne is for him not the right time, even though it is the right time in terms of the universe, so to speak. So we can see him struggle a little bit with his new role as king. And I'll come along when I sort of point out which of you are going to be more kind of not vulnerable, because that makes it sound as though you're weak, but you're going to be experiencing this great Pluto process as it just moves into Aquarius. I'm going to give you a list of those dates shortly, and probably when we look at the chart. So what else did I want to say about that? Oh, yes, the Industrial Revolution, of course, 1777 through to 1798. Well, we're not exactly going to have an industrial revolution, but we are going to have a technological revolution. And this is what artificial intelligence is all about. When you think how industry changed life for everybody, so will artificial intelligence change life for everybody. And unfortunately, we will not be able to judge quite how well that went until another 20 years have gone through. Personally, I'm a little concerned, but let's put concerns aside and get on perhaps with looking at what the sun, what Pluto looks like as it enters Aquarius. So the chart of Pluto into Aquarius that you can see on your screens now is taken from the perspective of Washington, D.C. That is the, well, I mean, because it is the capital of America, it's where we view what's going on in America as a whole. We take it from the perspective of Washington, where the seat of government is. So in a funny kind of way, this is a bit of a spurious chart. And I don't want you to be looking necessarily at that angular Neptune or the moon in the 9th house, or the fact that the sun and Pluto are conjoined in the 5th house. I don't want to look so specifically at that. I just want to show you the sort of degrees as Pluto goes into Aquarius, 0 degrees, 0 minutes of Aquarius. You can see the sun has moved a little past it, about half a minute past there. And what's significant about this is that it is drawing to a square to Jupiter, which we can see in that 8th house over there. And that's going to be part of our story, sign by sign, which I'm going to be covering in a short while. But what I did find interesting in this chart, and maybe in time to come, we'll be able to make a little bit more of what these signs are in terms of what Pluto in Aquarius is going to mean for America. And maybe we can see that Neptune in the 7th house. Remember, the 7th house is about relationships. So it's America's relationship with other countries, other nations, other parts of the world. And so we see with Neptune a sense of erosion. We sense those ties, those links with its partners as fraying, as dissolving. And I think that might be something relevant to what we're looking at here in this particular chart, and relevant as we go through these next years as Pluto begins its journey through Aquarius. I'm also interested by that moment in time, from the perspective of America, that midheaven and IC, we've got 22 Gemini, 36 on the midheaven, 22 Sagittarius, 36 on the IC, and that happens to be Donald Trump's sun, 21 degrees of Gemini, and his moon at 21 degrees of Sagittarius. He was born on a lunar eclipse, and that lunar eclipse is slap bang on this chart. Its imprint, its signature is on this chart as Pluto enters Aquarius. And I mean, do you really need to be an astrologer or a psychic not to know that the whole business of Donald Trump's second presidency is going to change the fate and fortune, shape and texture of the United States? Because whether he goes forward and is elected, or whether circumstances get in the way of that, or he is not elected by a free vote, there is going to be trouble in America. And there will be major constitutional change and upset. And I think we're sort of seeing this symbolized by this chart really quite clearly. Although, as I said, you know, we could say it's a bit spurious. You know, do you really create a chart for the moment Pluto goes into Aquarius from your point of view as a country? Well, I'm doing it and I'm speculating about it. And I think we'll go through the next 2 or 3 years and see just how helpful, insightful, or symbolic it really was. And since we've let the genie out of the bottle, so to speak, we've mentioned Mr. Trump. At this point in time, as I am recording this video for you, a lot of really, really important things are going on in terms of his ability to be the candidate for the Republicans and therefore go forward to a vote of the people later on in November. And what's going on at this point in time, just to refresh your memories, is that Colorado and actually quite a few other states now have disqualified Mr. Trump as a candidate for various reasons, due to the insurrection on January the 6th and his alleged part of that. And what is going to be happening in the time frame that this video covers, not only are we going to have a very important court hearing in regard to that very accusation in the January of this year, but also on February the 8th, the very issue about can you disqualify somebody from standing as a candidate for the president based on the so-called chapter three, so to speak, or is it chapter 14? I can't remember. It's the 14th Amendment, and it's section 3, which sort of labels things like insurrection as disqualifying you as a candidate and being convicted and all those things that might make you ineligible to be the president of a country like America. That's going to be examined. There are going to be oral hearings on the 8th of February. And as you'll see as we go through that, that is a very, very important date on the astrological calendar. The sun is square Uranus, and guess what? The moon is conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. So we have to know that that is an absolutely massively decisive day and event that will ricochet through the American public. Because remember, you are the Supreme Court of Justice. You have to make a decision now based on what is legal, what is just. And because America is so divided, you've got half the country are very pro Mr. Trump and believe he's been set up to fail, as it were, because of people who don't, the Democrats who don't want him anywhere near the White House. And you've got the other half of the country who are very anti Mr. Trump and at all costs don't want him to run again and certainly not to win again. So in a way, whichever way the justice, the Supreme Court falls, is going to upset half the country. But I was thinking about this before I started to talk to you all, and I thought, well, you know, maybe the lesser of those two evils is not to upset the Trump wing, because that would cause much more upset than if you went, you know, if it didn't go according to what they want and to actually have Mr. Trump as their candidate. If it went against them, there'd be much more trouble from all the people who definitely are really very pro Mr. Trump. So long-winded way, but this is all part of this period of time that I'm covering, which is, I mean, I've used this word so many times, but I'm going to continue to use it. We're in a period of sea change, huge, big change. So let me now also look at the center point of this period of time. And I'm going to take as my center point the full moon. And the full moon is on the 25th of January. The full moon is in Leo, the sun in Aquarius, the moon in Leo, because that gives us a picture of everything that's going on at the time. And I can talk you through the big events of that time. So here we are. This is the full moon of the 25th of January this year. And I've set it from Israel, again, for obvious reasons, because that is such a focus of conflict and concern. And already by the time this video will be up, things may already have happened. But as it is, this is quite a significant full moon in terms of Israel and the Leo Aquarius axis here. And it's a few days after Pluto has entered Aquarius, so the sun remains in conjunction with Pluto, the moon opposing Pluto. And if you look there in the 8th house, approximately 2 o'clock, if this were a clock face, you'll see that Jupiter at 6 degrees of Taurus is forming a T-square. So it's Sun, Pluto, opposition Moon, squaring the Jupiter. So this is a real power play. I mean, it's a very, very powerful full moon being squared by Jupiter. And although we always think of Jupiter as this planet of good times and the planet of growth and abundance and all the things that we want and like, good fortune, all of it, it's actually a planet that's really a dangerous planet in that it inflates situations. So if you've got conflict, you're going to get an inflation of conflict. If you've got a financial crisis, then you've got an inflation of that problem. So we can't just look at this and think, well, Jupiter's in the mix here, so it's going to be a happy ending. You know, all things are going to be great. Well, they may be. But we've also got to look at the reality of it and see that if tensions exist in certain parts of the world, they're likely to be, to be increased by this full moon at this point. Now, what I also want you to look at here, because if I take you through this period of time, on the 20th of January, the Sun will be conjunct Pluto, but it's like the 29th degree, 59th minute of Capricorn. It couldn't be any more on the edge than it is before it dips into Aquarius. But as you can see, if you look at the bottom of the chart, the sort of 5-6 o'clock position, you'll see that Venus, Mercury, and Mars are all in Capricorn, and they are going forward to meet with Pluto within the 3 weeks that I'm covering. What we'll find is that Mercury will be conjunct Pluto on the 5th of February. Mars will be conjunct Pluto on the 14th of February. Imagine that's going to play into a lot of people's Valentine's Day. And then we come to the Venus-Pluto conjunction on the 17th of February, at the same time as Mercury squares Uranus. And on the 9th, going back a little bit, we've got the Sun square Uranus, Moon conjunct Pluto on the 8th of February, which I mentioned in regard to the Supreme Court hearing. We've also got a new moon at that time squaring Uranus. So that's all very, very controversial and conflict-ridden. So you can see why I'm looking at this period of time and thinking, oh my goodness, we ain't seen nothing yet. So further points that I want to make as we look at this chart and we see where the planets are grouped. The fact that we've got the Sun, Mercury, Mars, Venus, all quite close together within the span of a sign almost, it means they're continuing to move around the chart and various points during the course of the first part of the year. As soon as you get the Sun somewhere, then Mars follows it, Mercury and Venus. So we're getting a concentration of those personal planetary properties at any given time, which is one of the reasons that we are finding such difficulties at the moment. It's not as though there's just one thing. There's a whole fleet of things going on. And if we go back to the start of the year, that first week of the year, I talked about the abdication of the Queen of Denmark. We looked at the assassination of the Hamas deputy. We saw the goings on in Iran, the 2 suicide bombers, and so many other things, the weather causing and wreaking havoc. So it's almost as though the things that we can see happening are accurately being mirrored by the cosmic forces as well. So taking you through this, as I just have with the major kind of events through this next 17 days, so to speak, those of you who have planets or points at 0 degrees of the fixed signs, that means Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, or you have birthdays around the 20-something of January, of April, of July, of November, then you're very much in the Plutonic process right now. And the other key player at the moment is Uranus. As I said earlier, Uranus will go stationary direct on the 27th of January. And a few days later, on the 8th of February, the Sun will square that point. And I think those of you with planets and points round about 19 to 22 of the fixed signs, again, that's Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio, or with birthdays between the 6th and 10th of February, the 6th and 10th of May, the 6th and 10th of August, and the 6th and 10th of November, you're right in the path of those Uranian influences. So the other things I want to mention here and for you to keep in mind I talked about King Charles with his moon at 0 degrees of Taurus. Therefore, this is a very difficult transition for him from prince to king. Now, guess who also has a moon at 0 degrees of Taurus? That's Joe Biden. So Joe Biden is also in the weeds at the moment and experiencing a lot of great difficulties. Now, I've also mentioned, when we looked at Pluto and Aquarius, Trump's, character or signature is on that, Pluto and Aquarius. And we've also got other things with other countries and nations which fall into this, this sea change. And wherever you are, whether you're in Poland, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in America, South Africa, nothing is smooth at the moment. We're seeing a change of order, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. So come back to me, because I want to talk about, I just mentioned the idea of if you have one of those birthdays or you have planets and points around 0 degrees, 19 to 22 of the fixed. I don't want you to approach this in fear. Fear is not what we do on this channel. What we do here is talk about how can we maximize this? What use can we put this to? How can we embrace this? So we're not fearing it, we're embracing it. And I think this is rather interesting, because when we think about Pluto, we think about the myth of Pluto, and we know that he was the king of the underworld. So we think about that being a terrifying place where the souls of the dead were ferried to. It was dark and awful and fearful. But there were great riches in the underworld, great treasure. And the kind of analogy here is that by going underground, by going deep, we discover that treasure. So whatever comes up during your Pluto transit, or even if you think, oh, I'm not one of those birth dates and I don't have anything necessarily at those degrees, well, you may and you don't know it. And yet you are presented with a situation that is not apparently of your making. Someone else has made that decision. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Something else has gone belly up, whatever it is. So you feel you've got nothing to do with this. But actually, what you need to do is figure out where it all began, and could you have done things differently? And is there any part of this story that might have been different had you done something else at some point in time? And by going through that, great discoveries can be made. And what you're doing is finding the treasure in this experience. But there's also another point to remember with any kind of Pluto transit, and they do go for quite a while. It's not like they happen on Wednesday and they're gone by the following Thursday. You're sort of in a Pluto process for 2 to 4 years. And I know from some of your comments and from the emails that I get, you feel as though you've been in a Pluto process for a decade or so. And it does take a while. But out the other side of that eventually is something amazing, because you have done that journey of 1,000 miles and you've come to your destination and are thoroughly enriched for the journey that you've had. And I think particularly with Pluto, we do look at what's hidden, what's in the dark. So we see that manifest a bit, that we're always frightened of what's in the dark or we can't see. And so the developments in the world that are dark frighten us more because we fear them more. But remember, by facing them, and this is what Pluto is all about, by facing your fear, by facing what's in the dark, you come to enlightenment. And I think if you can remember that and even look at these dark situations that are happening across the world and think, well, you know what? Out of this darkness is going to come some new light. And that's really important. And when we look at the Uranus part of the story, because remember, in this period that I'm covering on this video, we're also looking at Uranus stationary, about to turn direct, and all those aspects to Uranus, the Sun-Uranus square around the 8th of February. Then we look at the new moon, which is at, 20 degrees of Aquarius, that's squaring Uranus a few days later. So it's a very Uranian period, and I've given you the birthdays and the degree areas that are particularly susceptible to this. With Uranus, you get sudden change. You get the unexpected. Things happen very quickly, and you're not prepared for them. Now, that doesn't mean that things can't happen that are wonderful, that you aren't prepared for, and they, change your life literally overnight. But with Uranus, there's always this process of awakening. And if we want to embrace Uranus, and we want to think about what this Uranus disruption or change or surprise means to us, we have to know that it's waking us up. It's going to be waking us up to different things. It depends on your individual experience and your individual life. But if you think of it as I don't want to say a wake-up call, because often that's a little bit negative. But if we say awakening, it's got a really nice feeling. It's like, oh, I see, which is much more positive. And I think also with Uranus representing the higher self, the higher octave of the sun, that what we need to do in a Uranian crisis or some kind of set of experiences that happens suddenly and without our knowledge or even our participation is that we need to engage our higher self. And that probably means talking to it in a way, asking a question of it. What am I to do? And the response in your mind is going to prove very enlightening, I can assure you. So we engage our higher self as to the best way forward with this. And even if your higher self can't immediately give you the response and the guidance that you need, it will, and it'll come through dreams or as you wake up, that early sort of hyper hypnagogic state where we're very receptive to the unconscious influences, then we do receive messages at that particular time. So this is a very good way to make the most of what can be very difficult experiences. I mean, nobody likes the rug being pulled out from underneath them. Nobody likes to have to face what's hidden or in the dark and face what it is of themselves they need to face. Nobody likes that. But if we can see it as part of the solution, if not all the solution, then we make the most of our chances. We harness the nature and the experience of that planet, and we make something good out of it. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go through sign by sign and get a little bit more specific. I'm going to start with Aquarius, and as I said a little bit earlier, whether it's your sun sign or your ascending sign, but more important, what is the degree of your ascending sign? Because you want to know where Pluto is exactly. Is it in the 12th house? Is it in the first house? This is really important. But look at, or watch what I'm talking about with the sun in Aquarius, so to speak. You are an Aquarian, because it's going to prove useful and enlightening. So we're going to look at the full moon on the 25th of January, and we'll see there's a Sun-Pluto conjunction at the early degrees of your sign, and there's the moon in your opposite sign, and this is what we call the relationship axis. So this is all about a relationship will be a pivot for the experiences that Pluto is delivering you at this time. If we think about your being born round about the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of January, and undergoing this long Pluto transit of your sun, we are going to find it waking things up or being activated only when we get a personal planet or point attached to it. So this is one of those points. We've got the sun conjoined to Pluto, we've got the moon opposite. So we're looking at endings always with a full moon, closure and completion. And what you may find that by going back to the new moon in Leo of the 16th of August last year, that there is a connection between the events going on in your life right now, then and now. So somebody is the agent of the developments that are happening to you at the moment. Even if you're not in a relationship with them, it is somebody who brings you the meaning of this Sun-Pluto process. So it could be that you have a powerful conversation with someone and that reveals so much to you. It opens up new possibilities. Or there is news that reveals a secret or something you didn't know about, and that person has revealed it. And of course, once you know that information, you can't put it back. You know what it is. So information that you're given, the meeting of someone, your interaction with someone, your relationship with someone is going to be the reason that Pluto's properties are now revealed to you, in the sense of great personal transformation, change at core level, which we love, but also perhaps some events at this particular time of the year which are really powerful. And they don't necessarily have to be powerfully bad. You can have powerfully good developments. For instance, maybe you have unconsciously tuned into this period and have decided, I'm going to get married on the 20th, the 21st, that's when I'm going to get married. So that you have brought this influence right into your life as a signature on your marriage and your way forward. It's going to transform your life in ways you would have no knowledge previously about. There can be other ways of experiencing a complete transformation. I can talk about childbirth itself, which is quite an extraordinary experience. And then the fact that you now have a new little person in your life. And that's a major change, a major transformation of who you are. So there are lots of reasons why this period to you, Aquarius, could be very significant. But with the awareness that we have, and we have that awareness in terms of, what I've been talking about, we know that we're going to make use of what's happening at this time. We're going to see it as a torch light into something dark, and we're being revealed something that we hadn't previously seen, and that's going to make a measurable difference to our lives. And notice here that Sun, Pluto, Moon configuration squaring Jupiter in the 4th solar house. This may even tie in the family here, the roots of life, your base of life, so that there could be changes on the home front, changes to your home location, or issues surrounding the family or a property that are transformational in nature. So let's move on from Aquarius, and we'll move now to Pisces. Now for Pisces, that Sun-Pluto conjunction and Pluto's new journey through the 12th house is in the sign before you. So we are in the area of secrets and shadows anyway. So this notion of Pluto revealing something that's been hidden is very powerful in this 12th house, because it can come in the form, especially with the full moon at this time, that you suddenly start to make understandings about your past. Now, this might come quite randomly. You might have an event that makes you think, oh, that's familiar. Gosh, that's something that happened to me, when I was a child, or whatever it was. It was an extremely a pivotal experience in your life. So you're taken back to that period of time. Or it may be that just all by itself, or maybe you're in therapy or working with an astrologer, whatever it is, something is coming out about the past, and that's going to make a huge difference to you going forward. What we want to do in life is to recognize the patterns that are bad for us, the habits that are bad for us. And sometimes those things we are addicted to. It's like being addicted to sugar, or addicted to alcohol, or addicted to sex, or, whatever we might be addicted to. Pluto now coming into the 12th house its conjunction by the sun, its opposition to the moon and Jupiter, increasing that, that experience, expanding it, means that suddenly there is an awareness of perhaps addictive behavior and things and people in your life that you are subscribing to who are basically very bad for you. And yes, there might be some peripheral event, perhaps some changes on the work front, for instance, whether that just means changes in the workplace, different people coming into the workplace, or different ways of working, because the moon, of course, is in that 6th house of work, or whether we're looking at things to do with health, maybe a period where you've pushed yourself too hard. And what's happening here is that you have to go to ground. You have to take the pedal off the metal and, you know, allow yourself to heal, to process whatever's going on that's put a temporary or brought a temporary problem health-wise to you. But let's not forget that Pluto's whole passage through the 12th house is about revealing the past. And that can come in the way of your own past, your in living memory, so to speak, but it can be a deeper past. So it can be the past of your ancestors, so that you're carrying memories from way back in the generations that are harming you in some way. And they need to be addressed and looked at in the light. And if you are comfortable with past lives, the idea that you have lived before, then this 20-year period, periodically, there will be events, experiences, exchanges that directly take you to a remembered or unremembered past, or should we put it this way, the past in living memory that may be forgotten, or an unremembered past. And there's going to be a very, very powerful process. Now, if we come now to Aries, now the Pluto has moved from your 10th house, where it's been since 2007. And I think a lot of you Arians, or if you have Aries rising, have had a lot of big career changes. You may have completely reinvented yourself in this past sort of period since 2007. Maybe you felt you had a calling, or you felt prompted to do something very different from how you originally set out in terms of your work. Or you may have had extraordinary things happen to you. So you had the mantle of power placed on your shoulders, or you had your whole career ripped up in front of you, and you had to find a new way of earning money and making your material world work. So with Pluto moving now into the 11th house, which has a direct relationship with the 10th house, because in the 10th house, it is all about the material world and putting a roof over our heads and being recognized and being part of the world. Now, in the 11th house, we go beyond that and say, well, that's all very well, but what does this mean? You know, if I've got a job and, I'm earning money, and yet I'm not fulfilled, that's not the point, surely, is it? So with Pluto going through the 11th house over the course of the next 20 years, there will be that feeling of wanting to get a life or do the work of something that's humanitarian in essence, or much more aligned with your spiritual self, or how you envisioned a life being. So it's not about being recognized. It's not about a great salary or status in the world. It's about, what am I doing with my life? Why aren't I finding fulfillment in my life? And maybe my life needs to be simpler, or maybe my life needs to take me to a new country, or maybe I need to be exposed to new thinking and new groups and new societies. So it's going to be an extraordinary process. Again, no Pluto process is easy. It's always going to take you into your own darkness and into the dark. So there are going to be some fearful stages where you might feel you're up against the collective or up against a group, and therefore you have to find your way through And maybe that's what's relevant right now. Maybe right now, Aries, as I'm speaking to you, or you with Aries rising, Pluto and the sun in the 11th house, that you feel that you've got a large body opposing you, or you're not fitting in, or there is something about what you're doing that is causing you discomfort at a very, at a core level. Or maybe you're being exposed to a group or a collective or whatever it is that has great plans to change the world, and you've been brought into that. What a big burden that may be, even if it is welcome in a way. Lots of things to think about. And so now here we have the full moon really bringing out that experience. It is about the collective right now, Aries. Your role in a collective experience, your role in a team, all those kind of things. Humanity even. We've got really some very big themes going on here. But we also have very personal ones as well, because this axis, the 5th house where the moon is, the 11th house where the sun and Pluto are, is known as the axis of gestation. So that something is often born at this time after a gestational period. And we think about a baby being born, it's taken 9 months to be ready to enter the world. That's a very easy gestation to think of, and maybe that's relevant to you. On the other hand, there can be all sorts of other periods of gestation, a 3-month period. And if it's a 6-month period, it will take you back to the new moon in Leo, which was the 16th of August last year. So that we have this idea of bringing something into being, a huge kind of birth going on. And maybe this is a birth of a new you, or the birth of a new part of your life. And these are things to be thinking of as we go through this next period. Remember, I talked about PowerPoints of the year here. This is one of the year's PowerPoints. There are going to be more. So all the things that happen right now aren't accidents. They're actually quite fateful. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to Taurus. Now, Taurus, Pluto for you has moved into your 10th house. And so the Sun-Pluto conjunction is in that area of your chart, which is about where I'm going in life. If the ascendant in the 1st house is, this is who I am, but who I want to be is in the 10th house. So this is why we look at the 10th house for a career, a vocation, your status in the world. So Pluto at this point in time, remember, I'm talking about the imaginary 2 oceans meeting, and that passage, that dangerous passage in between those 2 great forces is the journey we're all making right now. And so you're making this journey. And if I look at it from a solar perspective, it has a lot to do with your place in the world. Now, your place in the world, especially when we look at that full moon, and we see the moon in the 4th house, can be where you live. This is your home. Is it that something is happening right now with the home, the family, your location, that is now makes it, everything is different. Everything is going to be different because of events that have happened around this time. And if we look at the bigger picture of Pluto's long journey through the 10th house, you're going to be more than one reinvention of you. So your career will change, or the roles that you play in your career will change. And you will or experience over this 20 years, both that experience of being vaunted so that you go high, you have great success. And at the same time, that rug can be pulled out from underneath you. Remember, we're looking at 20 years. So there's a huge range of experience. But the focus for that is all about your place in the world and how your ambitions and aspirations have taken you, where they have taken you to, and just what a true reflection of your ambitions and aspirations your career is, or your place in the world is, because that's going to be changed and transformed by Pluto. So the full moon at this time, and remember, we've got Uranus here as well, haven't we? We've got Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus. So it's a really, really big time for Taurus. So there's lots of change in the air, whether you're behind that change and saying, you know what, let's move home, let's move country, let's move the furniture around. And you can move the furniture around quite literally, or you can move it around metaphorically. But the reason behind that, the kind of dynamic behind it, is that it is time for change. And I know, Taurus, you're not a great lover of change, but you know, if you're going to grow, that involves change. And a lot of the things that are happening to you at this time, which are not of your making, but at the same time, you want to also remember that you can get behind this as well. That means embracing what's going on. Let's work with it, not against it. The worst thing in the world you can do at this time is try to control it or try to dig your toes in. You've got to relax. You've got to let it go. And as you let it go, you know, freeze up your psyche, you can see further than the end of your nose. So yes, this is an important period generally for you. And I think in many ways, and I talk about this in my year aheads, that Jupiter transit of Taurus is a growth period generally. And it's generally a period of good fortune. Remember, that's going to continue now right through until late May. So it is a time to get on board with anything entrepreneurial or anything that promises to make your life bigger and better. And perhaps to see in this Plutonic period, which is quite tough, that within that darkness, so to speak, if you put a torchlight on it, there's the stuff of the growth that you need, the good fortune that you need. And so on to Gemini. Now, I know that Gemini, if you're looking at Pluto's move into Aquarius, you're going to be looking at this idea of Pluto in the 9th house. And of course, Aquarius is another air sign like yourself. So, you know, you think, oh, there's a level of harmony here. So, you know, it's all going to be all right for me. You know, I've got Gemini rising, I've got, you know, Sun in Gemini. Hey, it's going to be terrific. Pluto's transformational properties are going to do great things for me. Well, they might. But the point is that you don't get anything without work when it comes to Pluto. You've got to confront the darkness. And sometimes that's difficult for Gemini. I mean, you are someone who is very light. And I mean that in a really nice way. You like to look at a lot of things. You like to look at a range of possibilities. You like to disperse your energies. You like to be objective. You don't want to get in deep, dark down there, because that is an uncomfortable place to be, and often there's no movement when you're in deep. But really, that's what Pluto's about. Pluto is encouraging you. I won't say forcing you to go deep, but it is, because it's where the treasure is. Remember my general talk about this, Pluto's kingdom, very rich, full of treasure, and you have to find the treasure in your Plutonic experience. Admittedly, in the 9th house, it does have a lot to do with wisdom and inquiry and consciousness and travel, the bigger picture. And so a lot of your experiences that are linked to all those things are the transformational experiences, but there can be other ones as well. But it is linked also to your view of the world. What is the world that you see? What is the world out there? And that's going to change radically. And because this 9th house is also the area, when we talk about far horizons, we don't just mean far horizons in terms of the other part of the world or travel to long distances, you know, long haul travel. We're looking also at your far horizons in terms of your lifeline, your timeline. So your view of where you're going to be in 5, 10, 20 years going to change radically, and it's going to change because of what changes there are in the world. It's going to be the world, global changes that are going to change your trajectory for what you want a little bit further down the line. In terms of current, with this full moon on the 25th of January, we are looking at that idea of the end of a journey, which is very appropriate. You begin a new journey with this Sun-Pluto conjunction, a new 20-year journey. But there is a sense of being able to close the book on something very powerful. On the other hand, it could be something a little bit more recent. When we think about the new moon of August the 16th last year, when something might have begun at that time, or something was current, it's now concurrent now. So something is happening now that is a reflection of that, but it is forming a sense of completion. Okay, I've done that, got it. And out of that, we get, new ways forward. As always with closure, then we open a new door after that. So it's a powerful full moon. It's squaring Jupiter. A little bit later on, when we get that new moon, which will square Uranus, these are all knocking at the door of your unconscious mind, so that there are all sorts of things that may be coming to mind or coming out of the woodwork, all sorts of realizations and awakenings, like, my goodness, I've just realized what that is, or why this happens, or what happened all those years ago. There are lots of things coming up for you also about your past. So let's move on now and let's have a look at Cancer for you. And remember, Cancer, that there's also my other video of what Pluto in Aquarius means in terms of this long cycle. You'll find more information there. What I'm doing here is referring to this and giving you a kind of heads up on this particular point in time. And remember, I'm talking about this in general in the overview, and also I might do it in the conclusion as well, is the idea that it's very intense at this time. Pluto's meaning in our lives, Pluto's promise in Aquarius, its potential, is really being experienced in full volume at this time. So this is the reason why you may be powerfully motivated to do something, or you feel that you're really up against some kind of big wall, and you keep banging your head against this big wall, trying to break it down. When, of course, what should you be doing? You should be stepping back, breathing, pausing for breath, and see if there isn't a way around the wall instead of through it, finding a new route. And so this is a very important process to be undergone at this time, Cancer, with whatever you're facing, whether it's a personal challenge, it's to do with a relationship, whether it's to do with money, whether it's to do with work, whether it's to do with the kids, whether it's more philosophical, maybe it's health-wise, whatever it is, going forward in the direction that you've been going in is probably the wrong direction. And what you need to do is stop for a minute, stop trying to control everything, every step of the way, breathe, and just wait and see what alternatives now come up. As I said, far better than to keep going in the same direction, following the same line of thought or the same dialogue with someone. You need to change it completely. You need to step back, change it. And I think a large part of that is surrender. It's like saying, okay, I've reached this point and I can't go any further, or it seems that, I can't go any further. So I've got to find a new way around this. Now, if we look technically at your solar chart, we see that full moon, the moon in Leo, Sun, Pluto, we're on the 8th second axis, the axis of self-worth, the axis of shared finances, intimacy, self-value, self-worth. So it's huge in many ways what's going on at the moment. And for some Cancerians, it may be that you've inherited a huge amount of money, or you've got a big settlement, or somebody is going to pay you a massive amount of money for something. And so that's going to transform your life. Whereas for others of you, it's quite the reverse. And suddenly you've had income taken away from you. You sort of don't know where your salary is coming from, where you're going to go from here. But it's the same axis of self-worth that it all comes down to really your value in yourself. And again, I've talked about this quite frequently, and I certainly talk about it in your written year aheads, which you can get on Astrolutely, is this idea that, you know, upping your self-worth isn't a matter of affirming it. It isn't a question of saying, I'm worth more. I am a really worthwhile person. My worth is amazing. Because there's a little voice in your head that says, no, you're not. So getting our self-worth up to where it should be is really a matter of thinking what it is that you do, that you give, that you are in life, what you offer, and recognizing that those offerings from yourself are the best you can deliver, and they are of great value. And that's the way you look at what you do or what you offer, as opposed to, you know, your value in terms of who you are. It's quite difficult to get around that, isn't it? We need something a little bit more objective. But this can be a very productive period for you, Cancer. Actually, you do great things at this time. And often, you know, when we're going through a dark period of our lives, it's very enriching, because having gone through that, we realize all sorts of things we didn't know, and our creative output in the wake of that can be amazing. All right, let's move on now to Leo. Now, of course, Aquarius is your opposite sign, so Pluto is moving in for its 20-year journey into your 7th house, so 20 years. And when we look at the moon, which is in your sign, full moon in Leo, it's very personal. So this is everything that's happening to you right now is very personal. It doesn't matter if it's finances or it's your job or it's, you know, whatever it may be, whatever it is in front of you that's challenging, it's personal. You're feeling it personally. Now, how you feel is how you feel. It's no good, you know, trying to tell yourself something different. How you feel is how you feel. So you've got to process that feeling. It is personal. And it's when you've processed those feelings that you can stand back from them a little bit and think, okay, so what does this all mean? And what are my options? So Pluto in the 7th house, as I said, you know, it's 20 years to go through there. So it's only going to be when it connects with a personal planet or point that you're going to get that experience. Very often it's a very powerful interaction with someone. So you meet someone who's very powerful, has a powerful effect on you. And that can mean you go into business with them, means you can marry them, you can go through an experience with them that is utterly transformational. But, you know, it's not one long 20-year, you know, same old, it's different. Whereas for others of you, it's the breakup of a relationship, the breakup of a business partnership, the breakup of something where you're in partnership with someone that means, you know, great changes in the way you operate. And of course, it's still personal, isn't it? Even if it's business, it's personal. You know, it's no good saying, you know, it's business or it's only money. Well, yes, it's personal because it affects you. So in many ways, this is a very powerful point. You know, whenever you've got a full moon and the moon is in your sign, you are empowered. Even if it doesn't look as though you are empowered, you are. So it is so important to really relax your grip on the situation. You know how often we believe that if we have focus, if we affirm things, if we put everything into manifestation, sure enough, it will happen. Well, it doesn't. I hate to tell you, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So sometimes when you're up against something that now means your vision of what you wanted, your thoughts of what something would be, are now not going to be, rather than continue to try to go along the same route, you have to stand back and say, this wasn't right for me, this wasn't the right way. You know, whatever's happening is meant to be, but it's meant to be for a reason. And that means that I personally have to change. I personally have to do something here. that means I'm going to be looking at the situation differently, and I'm going to be handling it very differently. It can be wonderful. There are loads and loads of people out there, or loads and loads of Leos, who are going to have this Sun, Moon, Pluto experience. They're going to feel, wow, how lucky am I? How extraordinary. Because let's not forget that this full moon is squaring Jupiter up there, top of your chart in Jupiter. Does it mean fame? Does it mean glory? Does it mean something absolutely fantastic happening? Well, yes, it could, but it comes with a cost. That's the thing to remember about Pluto. It's like birth itself. You may get a beautiful baby at the end of birth, but my goodness, what you have to go through to push that baby into the world is the pain, the effort that it takes, and the hours sometimes it takes. And that's really the Pluto experience. Great treasures at the end of it, but during the time you're going through it, not so much. And for you, what might be helpful is to go back to the new moon in Leo of August the 16th last year, because the things that were happening around that time, the things that were brought into being, whatever they may be, are going to have a part to play in what's going on at this particular time. So it's easy for me to say to you, relax, drop it, just drop it. Because the minute you do let go, it's like everything that is tense and preventing things from evolving properly, you let that go and it starts to free the situation up, and you'll see more options. So let it go, whatever it is, let it go, take a step back, and things will start to move forward a bit, and you'll see your way a little bit more clearly. So let's now come to Virgo. And for you, Virgo, Pluto is entering the 6th house. And of course, it was there for about 11 weeks last year. And actually, its influence has still vaguely been over this area, even though we say technically it fell back into Capricorn. So it's not there, it's in your 5th house. My goodness, it's very difficult to separate these houses with a Pluto transit. They're both sort of in play. So the 6th house is about the work of life. And I think that's a really, really good way of looking at the 6th house. We're doing the work of life. And what does that mean? Well, we're living from day to day. That's doing the work of life. But it's also about the life of work. So we do a job, or the things we do that we consider work, whether we're at home with the kids and we've got to make the home function and we've got to keep things rolling, or whether, whatever that is, we don't necessarily have to have a job per se to say we go to work. We do all sorts of work. But the idea of doing the work of life is a little bit nearer the idea of life purpose, isn't it? Why am I here? What am I meant to be doing? What is the purpose of my life? What is my life's work? So all these issues with Pluto moving through this 6th house are going to be very powerfully delivered to you from time to time, not the whole time. It's when Pluto connects with a planet or point in your own sign, in your own chart, that you'll get that experience, and something about this is what I'm meant to do, this is who I'm meant to be, is going to be at issue with that transit. But again, it's not going to be delivered to you like that. It's going to be delivered to you by events that seem as though they'll come out of nowhere, that suddenly you've lost your job, that suddenly, things are different. I use the idea of, if you're at home, you're an at-home parent, so you've got kids at home. And so your life's work is the daily looking after them and keeping the wheels of life functioning. But just imagine when those kids go off to university, you've got empty nest syndrome. And that's a radical change of your purpose, isn't it? So it's things like that that you need to think of. And maybe you need to think of them at this point. Are you retiring? Are you leaving the workforce? Or has your job expired? Something happened? Are you thinking yourself of, I'm not happy doing this, I want to do something else? So that it is the work situation that is changing. And that's the vehicle of the Pluto experience, because it will change you at core level. The changes that you are being forced to make are also changing you at core level. It may be health as well. We need to look at that, especially with this full moon on the 25th, on the axis of health and well-being, that if you've been pushing yourself too hard, if you've been neglecting your health, if you are overstressed, then this full moon is likely to show you that you've gone too far. Have you got burnout? You know, have you just neglected yourself? So health issues that come up around this time are really important to address and to accordingly change your lifestyle, because that's what's getting in the way of good health. All right, so let's move to our next sign, which is Libra. And Pluto is moving out of the 4th house and into your 5th house. And in fact, it is very difficult to say. Suddenly it's in one house on one day. Oh, and guess what? Now it's in another. It's a little bit fudgy, you know, and it's been a long-term resident since 2007 in your 4th house. So it's been influencing the roots of life. It's been affecting your home, your family, and the base of operations, really. I often think of the MCIC axis as the tree trunk of your tree of life. So the roots are in the 4th house, and they go deep down through your ancestors, and they represent all of that, your childhood, everything. And the top of your tree is where you're aiming for. You're looking at the light, the sky, how tall you're going to grow. But they have a relationship with each other, because if there's damage at the roots, you won't grow, you won't succeed, nothing will work in life. Whereas if your roots are nourished, then you'll grow, both as a person, and your career will grow, your place in the world, and all of that that belongs in the 10th house will thrive. So Pluto is showing you, I think, as it's in this transition between 4th and 5th, that the roots of life need great attention, and maybe you feel uprooted. I think that's an interesting way to look at it, because when we feel our roots have been uprooted, we're destabilized and things just don't feel right. So maybe there are family problems, maybe there are problems with the home itself, maybe there are other things that are going on that are making you feel as though, you know, you're not very comfortable, you don't have a base that's firm. So it's also in the 5th house, Pluto entering the 5th house, which is the creative area of life, still has loosely something to do with, well, perhaps not even loosely, mainly to do with children, your offspring, what you bring into the world, your offerings in that way, your creative offerings. So I think it's about, you know, sometimes when you're finding things incredibly hard going in life, and it's kind of eating away at your soul, that getting creative is a wonderful way of transcending that. However you get creative, either, you know, if you're an artist, you know, whether you paint or you make music or you dance, or maybe you go out in the garden and you grow things, or you get into the kitchen and you cook. It's that whole thing about getting involved in the creative act. Sex, that's a creative act or a procreative act. It has a way of channeling a whole lot of stuff that we're finding difficult, and we get a release from it. And as we get a release, we see all sorts of new possibilities. And I think Pluto's journey through the 5th, apart from saying that there's a lot to do with your offerings that are very powerful, something that you do creatively could change your life. Likewise, procreatively, a child could change your life, or a child's life could change you. So there are all those issues that we're going to be looking at over the next 20 years or so, but only when Pluto connects with planets and points in your natal chart. So if we look at this full moon now, which is very directly on the 11th, 5th axis, the axis of creativity, the axis of gestation, It suggests that something is complete, the end of the gestation period is over. And in regard to Pluto, perhaps you have been through quite a kind of purification, and that you might feel like, I've really gone through the mill here, but you know what? I'm almost feeling reborn. I'm feeling as though I've got lots of creative energy, and there are lots of things in my life that, having come through this period, I feel very fertile. And you know, these are words to play around with when we're looking at this Pluto in the 5th house, and we're looking at a gestation period, delivery, something new to come out of it. But at the same time, the birth process itself is painful. Ever been in labor? I have 3 times. Yeah, very, very painful. Hours of pain. But what comes out the other end is, of course, the most wonderful thing in the world. And that's a metaphor for what's going on at this time. Something that may be hard work, hard labor at this time is going to yield something beautiful. And that's a really, really nice thing to be playing around with. So on that happy note, let's move on to Scorpio. So Scorpio, this is not just for you a Pluto story, and of course it is a very important one because Pluto is your ruling planet, but it's also a Uranus story, isn't it? You're right in the mix there, with Uranus in your opposite sign, in the area of relationships. You've got Pluto at the very base of your chart, the roots of life, the foundations of the future, the Sun conjoining Pluto, eventually to square Uranus, a full moon squaring them all with Jupiter in there too. My goodness, some of you are having the time of your life, hopefully in a great and good way. And there will be plenty of Scorpios who are looking at this period of their lives and thinking, am I the luckiest person? But there are going to be a whole lot of other Scorpios who've got the other extreme, thinking, how could this possibly happen to me? Either way, the process is going to make a new you. When we think about Pluto ruling Scorpio, that is the idea of the phoenix rising from the ashes. It's about reinvention. And I often think of Madonna, who has Pluto close to the sun and Mercury in the ascendant. She is the queen of reinvention. We've had several different Madonnas over the course of her career, and she's showing us what Pluto and Scorpio is all about. It's about reinvention. You're shedding a skin, and hey, guess what? There's a new shiny skin coming out. Now, we don't know how uncomfortable that is for the snake who's shedding a skin, or the butterfly who is emerging from the chrysalis, but there's a fair chance it's a pretty painful experience, just as a Pluto experience is painful. And with the Sun conjoined to Pluto, and I've given you those dates, you'll be an October born Scorpio, then it's very much something that's directly in your line of experience now. And this full moon also playing into that means that you're at the peak of something. And when we think about full moons and endings and closures and completions, that can be a wonderful thing. You can have happy endings, the end to a long saga, and that means that a new one is to start. And we throw Uranus and Jupiter in the mix that you've got at the moment, and it says, look, there is no way that you're going back anywhere you've been. The only way forward is new, untrammeled territory. And again, the Uranian influence is particularly strong for those of you born round about the 6th of November, 6th to 12th, I think it is, of November, then you're right in line of these Uranian experiences in this period of time as well. There is a lot to offer in the way of your way forward in life. I know that the easiest way to think of that is your career, because if the ascendant is who we are, our personality, who we are when we go to, meet people, the 10th house really is who we want to be. The midheaven is what we're aiming for, the person we really want to be. So with the Pluto at the base of your chart, Sun conjunct Pluto, Moon at the top of your chart, in the area of career, who you want to be, the world at large, so to speak. This is a big moment for you. And whether we look at it positively and say, you know, this is a coming into your power, or we look at it and think realistically, things could be quite tough for you at the moment. You know, you could have domestic problems, you could have family issues, you could have issues with your property, or there could be career problems going on, job losses, struggles, power struggles. You know, that could be your lot as well. But it does offer you this transformational journey, so that, you know, you are the phoenix who's going to rise out of the ashes of your situation. And this is the focus for you. And it is the journey itself to finding your wings that we're looking at this particular point in time. And so onward, we come to Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, for you, we've got Pluto moving into the 3rd house. And of course, it was there for 11 weeks last year. You've got a little flavor of it. And as I described, this kind of night sea crossing, so to speak, this dangerous passage of 2 oceans, then this is really aimed at your outlook. And that's such an important thing, isn't it? It's how you look at things. What's your outlook on life? And if you have a good outlook and what things are beaming back to you is great, then your optimism is high and you convert your experiences into their most positive manifestation with a good attitude to life. But it isn't always possible to have a good attitude to life when you're up against it, when you've got problems somewhere, whether it's shortage of money, whether you've got problems with your children, whether you've got problems with your parents, whether you're out of a job, you've got a difficult job, your health isn't so great. I mean, it's difficult to have a very positive outlook when things aren't going well. But here's where Pluto comes in, because one of the things, Sagittarius, that you're not always very good at is going into the darkness. You are by nature a positive, philosophical, optimistic kind of sign. And in order to keep your optimism up and to keep those levels of positivity going, it means you don't want to go into the dark and the difficult parts, because they bring you down. But you see, that's what Pluto is doing in the 3rd house. It's saying, look, in order to see your world, to see your life as it is, you have blocked out some parts of it. They're hidden from view. And actually, this is beginning to create problems in your life. Your horizons are no longer as sunny as they used to be. And that's because you need to go inward. You need to look at what's going on there. And I mean, you might be screaming at me right now and saying, oh, I'm in therapy and I've done therapy and I know who I am and I've worked my way through it. But there's still probably a residue somewhere, and Pluto will do the last bit. Even if you've done loads and loads of work on yourself, there's probably still something that requires removing, especially if you keep running into the same situations. And with Pluto, that does happen sometimes. You keep saying to yourself, I've been here before. Why am I here again? So something needs shifting so that your outlook changes. And obviously, it's going to be different from Sagittarius to Sagittarius. But I think, too, on a sort of practical level, this is a very good time to start a course of something, to educate yourself, to do studying, and it's probably around your small world as well. It's not the big wide world. It's the small world of your worldview that we're interested in. So some kind of detective work, some kind of research is probably a good thing you need to be doing at the moment. And that full moon is all about, you know what, I've got to do some kind of research. I've got to get some knowledge. I've got to get more wisdom about what's going on in order to be able to transcend it. Remember, Pluto is about transcending situations. I mean, I could go on, Sagittarius, but I haven't got all night. But it's an interesting way to look at what's going on in your life right now and seeing it as this sense of your outlook on life, you know, and how this has the potential now to be changed greatly. And part of it might be changed by learning something. I suppose we can learn from life as well. In a way, it's all interconnected, isn't it? But, you know, looking into the dark is not a bad thing. It can be very illuminating. So last, final sign, Capricorn. We've gone all the way around. And of course, Pluto has been in your sign for all these years, since, you know, 2007. And it's a sea change, isn't it, for you? And with Pluto going back into Capricorn, as it did for many months in 2023, and it will return to your sign again in 2024, September through to November. You're not quite out of this Pluto experience, which is why I think, especially if you do have a birthday around about the 17th, 19th, 17th, 18th, 19th, even the 20th of January, you're going to be feeling this period at this time of being very kind of uncomfortable. I think that's quite a good word, because even if some good things are happening, they're not easy to digest. They involve some kind of big effort on your part, because it's going to involve change. And maybe you're a bit fearful of that change, or you're not sure you like it at all, even if the things that are happening are quite good. On the other hand, you might be feeling that everything in your life is at odds. You know, things aren't what they should be. You haven't got what you need. The things that you want in life aren't there. You know, you're going through a really big struggle, and you're not enjoying it one little bit. But you've got to see beyond the struggle. You've got to see that out of this, and it's a journey. It's a bit of a cliche, but it is a journey. You are going to be different. You see, you're not the person you were when you began this journey. Already you're different. And by the time you've completed it, you'll be completely different. You're a strong sign. Capricorn is the rock. You know, we always think about you are the one who bears other people's burdens. You are the responsible one. You are the one who looks at the reality of situations and makes decisions based on the reality. People look to you to be that rock. So when you start crumbling, it's very difficult, because you want to be there for everyone else. You don't want everyone else to no longer see you as the rock, but at the same time, you are a living individual, and stuff hurts, and you feel as though you're not like Atlas supporting the world on your shoulder. You know, even you need to say, this is too much for me. But there is another side to it. And I think this idea of realizing, and I said it to another sign, I can't remember which one it was, but this idea, I think it was your opposite sign, actually. I think it was Cancer. So the same kind of images are coming up. This idea that you've got a wall in front of you and you're banging your head on the wall in order to try to get through it, without realizing that if you step back, you'll see there's a way around it. You know, you're just going head on through it, through the same route that is tried and tested. You come to value your strategies so much that you can't see that actually your strategies are inappropriate for the situation you're in. It's demanding you pull back, allow things to settle, and by doing so, allowing new ways around a situation is what you need to do. And again, I don't want to stop all those of you Capricorns who are really feeling very fulfilled in life right now and thinking, I've got it all. I'm so happy. And I just want you, Penny, to tell me everything is going to be wonderful. Well, embrace your happiness and your good fortune. we should embrace it. We should think, wow, the planetary gods have been so kind to me. It's a blessing. But, you know, Pluto is you don't get your Pluto experience without effort. And as Pluto moves into the second house, this is all about you and your value as a person. And we think about values, we think about what is our life worth in terms of how much money do I have? What are my possessions? What is my worth? But it's more than that, isn't it? Who am I? What is my worth as a person? So Pluto is going to transform this, and it may indeed, as it goes on through 20 years, change your material worth as well. So you may come into loads of money. You may have a job that really transforms your financial and material world. But by the same token, you could lose it and find that you've got material losses. And if you have too much of yourself bound up into what you have materially, that represents who you are, then this is going to be a really, really difficult 20-year cycle as and when those things happen, because they only happen when Pluto connects with a natal planet or point. So really, this journey of Pluto through the second house is the understanding that you are you, and that your material worth has nothing to do with you as a soul, as a person, as a spirit, however you want to see it. And it's that journey that you'll be making through whatever things are given to you as the events you must work your way through, is that very understanding. But coming back to the now and this full moon, which is on the financial axis, the axis of self-worth, this is a time when perhaps you do come into money. It can be inheritance, settlements, all those kind of things. But it could also mean that you're in a financial crisis because there's no more money to pay for something or to deal with it. But there are ways around that. And that's why I'm saying, don't bang your head against a brick wall, to go into the darkness with Pluto and say, all right, I'm going to feel all of this. But out of all of this, I'm going to find new ways, new support, and I'm going to be changed by all of that. So really, to sum up, and of course, what I talked about at the beginning of the video, the kind of overview, as it were, going through sign by sign. And, we are going through a difficult time. And I know a lot of people are saying, what's going on? What is happening? And I have described it as this entry of Pluto into Aquarius. It's leaving the old behind, the old structures behind. And on top of that, we've got all sorts of other things going on. We've got Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. They're shortly going to be very close together. We've got that building. We've got Uranus and Jupiter coming together in the April of this year. Massive, massive astrological developments and big stuff for us as humanity and for us as individuals. So I said this a little bit earlier on, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's so important. We shouldn't be fearing any of this. And I know that I talk about going into the darkness and facing the dark to find the treasure that's within the dark. And I know that can sound fearful. Oh, I'm going to have a dark experience in my life. But that shouldn't be feared. It really shouldn't be feared. Remember, the dark can be a place of safety as well. When we're concealed in the dark, that can be a safe place too. But more truly, when we're looking at Pluto, we are looking at what's hidden in the dark that we need to see in the light. So we shouldn't be fearful of any of this, but we should be prepared. And I think that's different. If we're prepared for it, we have a much different mindset towards the experiences we're either dealing with now or those that are to come. We're prepared for it. We know that this is a big journey for mankind. We know it's a big journey for us individually, and we need to make it with courage and with awareness. And I think we think of this idea of Pluto is showing us something that's hidden. It's often showing us some aspect of ourselves that we don't see too well, or we have chosen to ignore. And when we think about the situations that happen to us, often in a Pluto transit, and we think, where did that come from? I've got nothing to do with this. I mean, the government decided, blah, blah, blah. But what that experience is saying is, hey, take a moment, more than a moment, look back where you are now. Had you done something differently at this time, before that time, whatever, that might have put you in a different place now. So it's a very good exercise to see what part you have played in the situation you find yourself in. And if something along those lines means that you did make an error, or you have allowed a behavior or an action that you have done that's also affected other people, that's something you need to explore now. I know that's a little bit more like Saturn in Pisces, you know, we need to look at the karma of it all. But it's this idea of, if we want to change and if we want to be part of this Plutonic change, then that means we have to know ourselves. And I think fundamentally, it's what this is all about. The journeys that we're all on at the moment is that the events we are meeting are opportunities to know ourselves. And when we know ourselves and we can be our true selves to other people, that's all we can ask of our journey through life, isn't it? To ultimately know ourselves. Okay, so last things to say to you. You know, I haven't done a video for a little while, and I just want to thank you for staying with me. And also, if you haven't sort of read any of my year aheads, which are available on Astrolutely, you'll get a lot more written information about what's in store over 2024. And that kind of goes as a good background to the way I work and the way I do my videos too. And I always thank you for being with me. I think it's amazing sometimes that there are so many of you with me. And I'm humble about this because I serve you, really and truly. So I will see you in on my next video. Bye for now.